Hello and welcome back to Fun with History. In this video we will study the First World War, also known as World War I or the Great War. I have divided this unit into 7 points: the build-up to World War I, the alliances, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the different fronts, the end of the war, how was society during the war, and finally, the Paris Peace Conference. The late 19th century and the early 20th century was a time of increasing tensions between the European powers. Great Britain, France, Germany and Italy were all competing to expand their overseas empires. This caused rivalries between the countries and led to an arms race. France had lost Alsace-Lorraine to Germany in the War of 1870 to 1871 and wanted to get it back. Russia wanted safe access to the Mediterranean, which led to wars with the Ottoman Empire in the Balkans. Austria-Hungary was made up of many nations, some of which wanted the independence. After Serbia and Romania gained independence from the Ottoman Empire, nationalist feelings in the Balkans grew. Governments used propaganda to increase nationalism. They encouraged people to think that their country was the best and that the other countries were enemies. As we have studied in class, at the Congress of Vienna in 1815, the main European countries had agreed to cooperate. Now they formed two competing alliances. In 1882, Germany, Austria and Italy formed the Triple Alliance. They agreed to give each other military support if there was a war. France, Russia and Great Britain signed the Triple Entente in 1907. This agreement said that the countries had a moral obligation to support each other. On June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir of the throne of Austria-Hungary, was shot dead in Sarajevo by a Bosnian Serb called Gavrilo Princip. Princip belonged to an organization that wanted Bosnia to leave Austria-Hungary and become part of a Slavic nation led by Serbia. Austria blamed Serbia and issued an ultimatum with 10 demands. Serbia was given 48 hours to accept. It accepted almost all of the demands, but Austria wanted an excuse for war, and some of the demands were unreasonable. For example, Serbia had to let Austrian soldiers and police into Serbia. When Serbia refused this, Austria declared war on them. Russia, which was an ally of Serbia, declared war on Austria, and the alliances between European countries meant that soon most of Europe was at war. Let's remember which were the countries that fought in World War I. The Central Powers were Germany, Austria, Bulgaria and the Ottoman Empire, while the Allies were France, Russia and Great Britain. In 1915, Italy joined the Allies, although it had been part of the Triple Alliance. World War I was fought on a number of separate fronts, but the two main ones were the Western and the Eastern Front. Germany had developed the Schlieffen Plan for a war against both France and Russia. This plan involves attacking France first and using a maneuver warfare to win quickly by taking Paris. After that, the Germans could turn east and fight the Russians. In August 1914, Germany invaded France through Belgium. The plan almost succeeded, but in the Battle of the Marne, the French and British managed to stop the Germans just before they reached Paris. Both sides now dug trenches, which started a period of attrition warfare. For the next 3 years, the front hardly moved, although both sides lost huge numbers of men in battles like the Battle of Verdun or the Battle of Somme. In World War I, many new types of weapons were used in large numbers. For the first time, machine guns gave a big advantage to the defenders, particularly if they could dig trenches to hide in. After the initial German attack, other sides dug lines of trenches from the North Sea to the Alps. The trenches were easy to defend and difficult to attack. This meant that the front line hardly moved for most of the war. The only real way to attack was to go over the top of the trench and try to advance through no man's land. This was terrifying because the soldiers had no way to defend themselves and just had to hope that they were lucky. On the first day of the Battle of Somme, 60,000 British soldiers were killed or injured going over the top. Thanks to the letters and diaries that soldiers wrote, we know a lot about life in the trenches. Artillery was a constant danger and at any moment a shell might land in the trench. Some shells contained poison gas. Even if they were not physically wounded, many soldiers were traumatized by the experience and suffered from a mental illness known as shell shock. In between artillery attacks, there were long periods of miserable boredom. Conditions in the trenches were awful. They were muddy and full of rats, and many soldiers suffered from trench food because of the damp. There were food shortages, and they mainly ate tinned beef, biscuits, jam, and tea. At the start of war, Russia invaded both Germany and Austria, but suffered a terrible defeat against the Germans at the Battle of Tannenberg. In 1915, the Central Powers counterattacked, took hundreds of thousands of prisoners, and Russia suffered terrible losses in the continued fighting. In 1917, there were two revolutions in Russia, partly because the war was going badly. This led to a civil war, and Russia had to withdraw from World War I. Russia and the Central Powers signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which ended the war on the Eastern Front. This allowed Germany to move more troops to the Western Front. Meanwhile, the United States joined the Allies. In spring 1918, the Germans launched a major offensive, which was initially successful. However, they lost many of their best men, while Allies were continuously reinforced by new American soldiers. In the 100 Days Offensive, the Allies won the decisive victory, held by thousands of tanks. The Italians were also winning the war against Austria. As the defeat approached, both the German and Austrian emperors were forced into exile. First, Austria and the Ottoman Empire surrendered, and then on November 18, 1918, Germany surrendered, ending World War I. World War I involved far greater numbers of men than any previous war. Over 60 million men fought. Almost 10 million were killed and another 20 million were wounded. It was also the first big industrial war, which meant that it required much more weapons and ammunition. Countries had to use all of their resources to provide the things needed for the war: soldiers, military equipment, and food. This changed society, and particularly the role of women. Before the war, most people thought that women's place was at home and that they should not get involved in politics. Many women did men's jobs during the war. They also worked as nurses in military hospitals. Even after the war, there was a shortage of men, which created new opportunities for women to find work. Women demonstrated that they were capable of working outside the home, and so support for women's suffrage grew. In 1918, some women in Britain got the vote. They had to be over 30 years old and own property or be married with a property owner. It was only in 1928 that all women over 21 got the vote in Britain. Women got the vote in Germany and Poland in 1918 and in the United States in 1920. When the war started, Britain only had a small army of professional soldiers. Soon, government propaganda encouraged millions of men to volunteer to join the army. As the war went on, the number of volunteers fell. In 1916, after many soldiers were killed and injured, conscription was introduced. This meant that all men between ages of 18 and 40 had to fight. The British government took over the coal mines and factories and used them to produce weapons and ammunition. As most men were fighting, women did many jobs, including mining and factory work. After World War I, the Allies held a peace conference in Paris. It involved 32 countries, but they were dominated by the Big Three: France, the United States, and Britain. The President of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, had proposed 14 points, which he said were essential for lasting peace. These points formed the basis for the discussion, but there were many disagreements between the Big Three. For example, France and Britain wanted to punish Germany, while Wilson didn't think that Germany should be blamed for the war. In the conference, there were different treaties: Versailles with Germany, Saint-Germain with Austria, Trianon with Hungary, and Neuilly with Bulgaria, and finally Sevres with the Ottoman Empire. The content of the treaties can be summarized in these points. Germany will reduce the size of its military and destroy weapons. It couldn't have an air force of submarines. Germany would accept that it was guilty of starting the war and make reparation, it means payments, to compensate other countries for the damage caused. These were to be paid gradually over a long period of time. Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania became independent of Russia. Poland was created from German, Russian, and Austro-Hungarian territory. Austria-Hungary was split into separate countries: Austria, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovakia. The Ottoman Empire was split into several countries, including Turkey and Syria. Germany had to return Alsace-Lorraine to France and give territory in the east to Poland. Germany had also to demilitarize the Rhineland, which was on the border with France. One of the Wilson's points was the creation of a League of Nations. The League would help to stop wars by finding peaceful solutions to conflicts between countries. It would also improve healthcare and working conditions and encourage international trade. The League was set up in 1920, and 42 countries joined, including Britain, France, China, and India. However, the United States chose not to join, while Germany or the Soviet Union were not allowed to. And that's the end of this unit. Next one will be about the interwar period. Remember to take your Cornell notes, watch it more than one time, and complete your Tiki-Toki timelines. See ya!